It's when you're in trouble, you realise you need a health check. There's this saying that, culture eats strategy for breakfast is I would say, very, very true. You just need to make sure you get the right people on the bus, and the bus is going to go to a good place.
Hello and welcome to the VFM Podcast. I'm here with Ian Fairbairn. Today we're going to be talking about business health checks. So Ian, business health checks, it's a service that VFM offers. What is it?
A health check is, for a business, is a bit like, a checkup. You go to your doctor to see how you are, how healthy you are. And it's exactly the same idea. You go into a business and you undergo certain analysis, which leads to a diagnosis and recommendation. So the difference would be that with a business health check, quite clearly, you've got to get information from a lot of different sources. Very often that can appear quite random. So what you've got to be able to do is to pull those together. And what you're looking for are the big things, the things that are actually going to make a significant difference. So we call those big things the elephant issues. And we call them elephants because they are elephants running around in the business. So these elephants are running around. Some of them are good elephants. Some of them are bad elephants. You'll always find that some are to do with sales and marketing. You normally find they're to do with people. And what you try to do is to put them all together, see how they're related to each other, work out how to leverage the good ones so you can get more out of them, and think about how you can minimize or eliminate the impact of the bad ones. So that's, in a nutshell, what a health check is, but there's a lot more detail as well.
So it's a complete picture of the business, and we're looking for the big items. Is this for any size business, or is it sort of smaller?
Right. So with this, it's probably better with the small and medium-sized enterprises, because large businesses ought to have subject matter experts, right, who should be capable of understanding what these issues are. In that case, maybe the job of somebody from outside running a health check would be more about coming up with a synthesis of the situation. And I think then it would be very much about, okay, if this is the information, then we'll help you plan that through. But for small and medium size, very often that expertise, if it might not be there, if it is, it's probably not being exercised on a regular basis. And particularly when you get into some of the niceties and complexities to do with process and to do with finance and to do with people, they're not always at the top of the agenda, where they ought to be in a larger organisation. So it does work for all organisations. However, I'd say the health check in its analytical form, its data gathering form, is better in a small and medium-sized enterprise. That would be my view.
So you mentioned people there. It's obviously going to be a broad category, both good and bad. I suppose what are sort of the big issues around people? I can think of the obvious thing is, do we have enough people? Do we have too many people? What else could there be?
Right. So you've got to take a step back even from that, because you asked a lot of interesting questions there. So it's about the right number of people. Are they the right type of people? Are they what competencies do we need? But all of those questions, or the answer to those questions, ought to be driven by a much higher level business plan. All right. So the health check really is, it wouldn't start with the people. It wouldn't normally do that. like I say, if you haven't got an elephant in the people side of the business, you wouldn't really worry too much about that. So what we do is we take a balanced approach, and the balanced approach is really focusing on four things, of which people are definitely, it's a big element. But we would always look at the financials, we would always look at the processes, we would always look at the customer interface, and we would then look at the people. So the people side, have we got the right number of people? Have we got the right competencies in those people? And then you can look at things like the age profile of those people. And what you can anticipate issues before they arise. So they might be elephants. For example, if you're going to succession, that could be a major elephant issue. Sometimes that's not so important.
Yeah, just to clarify, by succession we mean sort of passing on the business and future-proofing the business, making sure we've got the right talent.
That's
there.
right.
Is that
That's
correct?
right.
Yes.
That's right. I think that sometimes we can worry a little bit too much, about some of these things. If you have a good culture in the organisation, then really you don't need to worry too much about even where people sit on the bus. You just need to make sure you get the right people on the bus, and the bus is going to go to a good place. There's this saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast is I would say very, very true, particularly again with the smaller medium-sized enterprises. So as long as the bus isn't full of people who are going to retire next week. As long as the bus driver's got an apprentice working for them, then I think that's what we would look for. So that's the ideas of succession. But of course, succession, we can talk about, handing on the business. But like I say, future-proofing is probably better. So we would talk about succession planning, in departmental terms as well as overall business terms. So it could be that you need a succession plan in a particular part of your business, whether that's your workshops, your parts department, your sales department, whatever it might be. It's not always about succession at the very top. Sometimes it's succession at a managerial level, not just a leadership level.
Okay. Your analogy of the bus there, getting the right people on the bus, I've heard you use that before. It's quite important. Is it just about making sure the right culture, or is it just you have the right person on board, they want the success of the business, and they drive it themselves almost? Is that?
Yeah, so the business schools, if we go back 20, 30 years, the business schools were obsessed with strategy. And the idea was that, you set your strategy, and your strategy dictated everything else. Of course, within strategy, there are different levels of strategy, and it's not to say strategy isn't important. I think it's really important, for example, to have a product strategy, and services strategy. I think that would be fundamental. But the overall corporate strategy idea, that was, very much in vogue in the past. That's not so, fashionable today. And I think the reason for that is that, so if you had the strategy, the idea would be to say, this is the bus, we're going to drive the bus from A to B. That is the strategy. What I've just said there about the right people on the bus isn't that. It's actually get the right people on the bus. Some people say put them in the right seats. Depending on your business, I'd agree. In other businesses, I don't think the seating is that important, but in some businesses it is. But if you get the right people on the bus, then the bus will go to a good place. Now, whether that is B or whether it's C or D, but the idea of the right people on the bus is more culturally driven than it is strategically driven. But out of that, you would then get a people strategy or a marketing strategy or a product strategy or a financial strategy. That would be, if you like, in the sort of nice, if you have plenty of time on your side. But sometimes with a health check, the patient is in A&E.
Right.
The patient's having a heart attack. So the very first thing we would do is, the very first question is this an emergency? Is the stock out of control? Are we about to run out of cash? Are we really vulnerable to somebody falling ill and leaving the business? Is the business finished? So we look to see if we're in an emergency situation, because sometimes you haven't got the time to do the niceties. Sometimes you go into a business and you find everything's really good. It might be just a few tweaks of maybe process or something like that. So I think that's there isn't a one size fits all here. Our approach might be process driven, but the outcome is always different. It's never the same. Never the same.
So the health check is both for sort of emergency situations, but also longer term. Actually, I feel my business is quite healthy, but I just want to maybe tweak a few things here and there. So it's not limited to one set of scenarios.
No, it isn't. But if you go back to the idea of the elephants, then there is a school of thought to say that the job of senior management, the people at the top, is to deal with the elephants. Yeah. So if you've got the same bad elephants today as you had 10 years ago,
right,
I would say senior management has failed.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. Yeah. If they haven't made impact on those elephants, then there's failure at that level. So it's not always just looking at the financial issues. Yeah, if there's something which it's been identified as a real weakness, but a strategic weakness in the business, it is incumbent on the leadership in that business to work on it. So the health check can work very immediately, very in your face, like it's time to do a bit of CPR here. Yeah. It might, however, just say, you need to watch your blood pressure and do a bit more exercise. So it is very, very flexible in that frame.
You also mentioned one of the other big things was the customer interface. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so really by that we mean two things. Clearly we mean how the company communicates and works with the customer, but also the other way around, how the customer actually works with us. If we take the company to the customer, there are two key areas in that interface. One is obviously your people. What sort of contact at what level and what frequency do we have that contact? Now, depending again upon your business, that will be very different. If you're selling high value items of capital equipment, then quite clearly you'll need that to be very personal. You'll need that to be regular. If you're selling used equipment, it might be more in terms of having a very strong web presence, for example, and comms, marketing communications. Quite clearly, though, there are other bits of your business that might be mail order or something like that. So, there are the people element, I think, is one thing. But the second piece of the interface from the company out are the processes. Are our processes easy, transparent, fair to the customer? Yeah. Because if the customer finds that it's difficult to work with our processes, they're not going to be happy. Yeah. So whether that's just telephoning your bank and having to sit in the queue for an hour, which is not very good, my invoice is easy to read and understand. That would be that side of it. So from the company out, it's about how easy are our processes and how good are our human relations. And I guess from the other side in, the customer side in, we're looking to see the contact that the customer would have, and particularly from the commercial side, the customer's paying their bills. I would think that would be a very important thing to make sure that customers are happy with what they're getting. So then, to complete the loop, we do it in many different ways. You can do customer surveys, purchasing surveys, satisfaction surveys, or success surveys. But you're looking to see how that would go together. And within that, you would break that down into process as well. So you might go right the way down to saying, I have got a regular loyal customer. What is the process for dealing with this customer? Yes. And you can document that out. He should have or she should have one visit from the managing director of our business once a year just to make them feel important. Completely opposite to somebody who's not a customer at the minute, but we'd like them to be a customer. How are we going to make sure we're always in front of them with a good message about our business? So that's what I mean by that.
Ian, we've run out of time, so thank you. But any sort of first steps for someone who's, is it for everyone to consider a health check, or how often maybe do we want to consider doing them? Just very practically before we finish.
Yeah, I think if the enemy of the health check is when things are okay.
Yeah.
Right. If things are good, people go, "Oh, what the heck?"
Yeah.
It's when you're in trouble, you realise you need a health check. Yeah. Or if you're great, you realise you need a health check because you're always looking for that marginal increase. So what I'd say is that the people who are in trouble and the people who are really good already do it. Yeah. If you're in the middle, then I'd say, right, you want to be considering this. And I think a good place to start would be with a staff survey and a customer survey, getting out and talking to those two important groups. And then, you can use a company like VFM to do the health check for you, which comes with obviously a report with recommendations, and help with implementation, because implementation is more important.
Yes, and of course it's also better to have, I would say, an external pair of eyes on something rather than, you obviously can do it internally, but...
yes, yeah. I'd say somebody from outside will see things differently and be able to talk to you in a different way.
Yes. Yeah. Ian, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure as always, Adam.